An ode to autism. Asleep, floating between snow leopards, I slumber under great-grandfather's desk. A reptilian child, my mind matures, reasons, retreats during hot seasons. Dreaming, unaware of the great out there, no squelching school buses, no crowds, no close talkers. Sleep, foggy banks of sleep. A great tank below, enormous koi, orange and yellow, circle slow-moving light. I am undetectable neon in a city full of eyes. An invisible man unstuck in luck, steering his steam-powered riverboat straight into white noise and unrushed touching. Comfortable. Awake, a full frontal maelstrom, uninhibited but undrugged. My mind, where is my mind? It's in war-torn mountains. But in this diner, people off buses, baby cries, and the sound of chewing, aware of what everyone's doing. On the kitchen's window ledge sits sugar, salt, and cinnamon, content in place. I am not. The waitress bats her lashes as if a sparrow's in her eyes. Every nook and corner, song, ringtone, and odor, this moment in vivid color. Awake, breathe, serene against a riot. Don't grow blue, because God whispers, I am in autism too.
Wow, beautiful, beautiful. Oh my goodness. So when did you write that? And obviously just hearing it for the first time, I'm impressed. How's the feedback been on that poem specifically?
That is the first time it's ever been publicly read. So we'll see.
Clifford, what would you like the world to know about you?
That autism is not defining, that success is hard won in any condition. And I believe that autism for me has been a tremendous blessing for my career and for my state of mind.
That's awesome. And obviously I know this already, but can you tell our viewers a little bit about when you were diagnosed and what were some of like your first thoughts when you got that initial diagnosis? Because you just got that diagnosis a few years ago.
I did. I'm extraordinarily lucky not to have a nightmare story with misdiagnoses like many of my friends who are autistic have dealt with. But I did go through some early hard times where, due to the emotional acuity that we tend to carry, that the bipolar diagnosis was thrown around a lot, and the medications for it never worked because it was trying to medicate something that I didn't have. Around the age of 38, I started to go to a psychiatrist again, and he came at it anew and asked me new questions. Asked me what I did for a living, and I said that I was a writer. And on the next visit, I brought him my books. And the meeting after that, he sat down and he said, "You understand that you're autistic, right?" And I said, "No, I did not understand that. I had no idea. Tell me more about this." And he told me like it was going to be like a bombshell. So, I was already prepared, like, what's wrong with me? And when he told me what it was, there was a tremendous sense of relief because it is, as hokey as it may sound, it felt right immediately. And over the next 2 years, we focused on autism proper, being not the issue, but a gift that I had to understand how to unwrap and appreciate. The writing component of it was how I've been dealing with it unknowingly for years. What he picked up out of my poetry was that I always write about society from a distance. Like I'm trying to figure out why they do what they do and why they behave the way they do, and really how I fit into it. There's a distance there. And any poetry that I write about myself, it's kind of in a dream state. It's always in a traveling, trying to figure out this underlying frustration that accompanies the condition. Exercise being another huge factor in my sanity. But once I was properly diagnosed and understood what it was, and then began to take active steps into managing my anxiety, my temper, my chronic social discomfort, obviously life became a much more manageable and enjoyable.
Yeah. So were you diagnosed with anything before getting your initial diagnosis? Because there's so many people in our community, I feel like, who get dual diagnoses. So I was diagnosed with autism when I was 4, but because of my fine motor challenges, I wouldn't actually find out until I was about 18 that I also have dysgraphia, which is a handwriting disorder. Did you receive any other forms of diagnoses?
I do believe that there are some issues with mania as far as like the anxiety and my inability to deal with that. I will, and what many people don't understand about those with autism is that these emotional outbursts that they see us have, they don't know that we have, for God knows how long, tried to squirrel in our head why something is the way it is, and it doesn't make any sense. But what they see is this sudden outburst. Over time, I've gotten a much better handle on it, knowing what it is. But as far as diagnoses, I was diagnosed with some manic components along with autism.
Got it. Got it. So, well, what got you interested in poetry? I honestly, that was one of the big reasons why I came out about. So, I've always had the invisible diagnosis. People always say, "Oh, you don't look like you have autism." So,
Dude.
I wrote a poem when I was 18, and poetry has always been so therapeutic for me. And I wrote a poem called "Only If You Knew Me," which kind of told the world for the first time that I had an autism diagnosis.
Mm.
It was so life changing that it made me want to self advocate first and foremost by writing poetry, which really inspired me about your story as well. What encouraged you to get involved with poetry?
This is one of my favorite stories to tell. When I was 10 years old, my mom found a little notebook that I was keeping short stories in. And I didn't know until much later, this is a very common for creative autistics. I didn't write for anybody. I would write these little worlds and little lives that made sense to me. People behaved in a way that made sense to me. And my mom found it. And I remember coming into my room and she had it out and she's like, "Did you do this?" And as a kid, you're like, "Oh my God, I'm in trouble. Do I lie or do I say, do I lie? Do I?" "Yes, ma'am." And I remember this relief coming over her where she realized that I had, in my social awkwardness, found a place of peace and calm. So I wrote humorous nonfiction and kind of fantasy-based fiction for about 20 years. And then when I was in my early 30s, an agent in New York wanted to see my material, and I sent him just a handful of poems that I had actually written, the only ones that I ever had. They ended up calling me back and really appreciating the prose, but loving the poetry. I was a fan of poems, a fan of poetry, never really delved that much into it. Loved music. Music is my therapy. It's my medicine.
Preach.
My agent said, "Look, do you have any more of this poetry?" And that's when I began to lie a little bit. And I said, "Oh my God, I've got so much, dude. I've got way more poetry than I could even, how much do you want?" He's like, "Well, can I have 80 pages in 3 days?" On the inside, I'm crying like a 12-year-old. On the outside, I'm like, "Oh man, I got you. I totally got this." What I came to find out in those next 3 days, and the poetry that I created new, I'm glad I can't find anymore because I'm sure it was awful, but it was just good enough to get my foot in the door. And when he saw the therapeutic release, the catharsis of being able to take my mind off the literal and put it into the poetic mindscape where I could talk about these big painful things directly, but with a melody infused in it, I immediately figured out that this is what I need to focus on. And I still love prose, but what got me into poetry was the enormous relief it gave me from the loss I felt in understanding everything it felt like.
Obviously, there are a lot of misconceptions when it comes to autism. What is one thing you should not say to somebody who has autism?
"You don't look autistic."
Okay. Yep.
When you said that, I was like, "Oh my God," because I don't know what to do with it. You're like, "Really? You don't look autistic?" And I'm like, "Do I get mad about this? Do I, is that offensive?"
Oh goodness.
It's and if we ever, in the situation that I've always said, and I do believe to a large degree, that the things that bother those with autism bother everybody. They just bother us a lot. I don't think anybody enjoys being someone coming up behind them and going, "What are you doing?" No one likes that, but we go to a really, "Let me tell you what I'm doing right now, man." the idea when you need a minute, when there's just too much going on, too many people coming at you, and you say, just let me back up for a second. I've never known anybody to do it with a negative intent, but they naturally want to come towards you to hug you and to reassure you. And you're like, I'm telling you, just give me 5 minutes and I'll get my act together. And so they're chasing you around the house or wherever it is, just leave me alone. And then the more it is, so it's just give us space. Give us space.
Absolutely.
We 100%. Will calm down.
Well, yeah, no. And I don't think it's ill-intended ever. I think it's more just on the lines of the lack of awareness. And obviously, if you don't have that personal connection, I mean, a lot of the times, how are you going to know what to say? But yeah, I totally agree 100%. So you were mentioning like family for a second during that. So professionally, you have had many accomplishments. What are some of your focus personally, if you don't mind me asking, in terms of family and everything else?
With family, and my work in better understanding myself has made all my relationships so much easier, because I know not what bothers me so much as why it bothers me. And then I have the ability to describe that to people, because many times, every time, it's not just the what, but the why. If you understand the why, then you'll know to not do that or why you should do that, whatever. Romantically, that's a challenge. I am a persnickety dude. Yeah, man. So, as soon as you figure that out, you let me know. But that's no joke one way or the other. With running a company, the Summit Collective Experience is the company that I built and founded to really initially be a safe place for professional artists from all genres to come together and be able to be happy about what they've achieved and share networking techniques and stuff like that. But really, when I stepped back from it, it was also to create myself a world that made sense, not in one that I was the ruler and pulled all the strings. I'm not that kind of guy, nor do I want to have that kind of power. But it really was, by and large, this exercise in dealing with society at a distance that was comfortable with me. And there's no judgment of particular people or of background, but just people that dealt directly. And on a personal level, again, I used to be chronically plagued with what do they mean? What do they mean by that? Because they said this, but it felt like that. And then when some promise is broken, I'm told, well, that's the way the world is. And there again, that frustration, but that makes no sense, you know?
Yep.
So having that tribe around me, that's not here to yes me or feed my ego, but to say, yeah, man, they're not being straight with you. Or no, dude, you don't need to worry. These people are being cool. That again, and just that level of trust, I didn't think was ever possible. Because there's that vulnerability where you are to some degree, or at least for me, feeling like I'm saying I'm too weak to figure this out. Once I got over my own ego, I realized that if I am lucky enough and blessed enough to have a handful of people that'll help me through this world, then my life is good.
Yeah, absolutely. And keeping it 100. That's at the end of the day. That's why I tell people, just keep it 100 with me. I'll keep it 100 with you.
Yeah.
Obviously, we just had a presidential election, and I never get into like politics on my interviews. But the one thing I love to ask people is, if you were the president for just one day, what would you like to see happen for people impacted by a diagnosis, whether it be autism, whether it be any wide range of disability?
A support system, a phone number, a website, somebody that's going to be there to talk to you, because whether it's art in any form or a vocation that you spend a majority of your day and your life in, you need to feel like you're in good company, that other people fear what you fear, that other people sometimes feel as lost as you do now, and provide that universal service of it's going to be okay. And I know that sounds like I'm oversimplifying it. But so many times, whether it's suicide prevention or a diagnosis understanding, knowing that somebody there really knows how you feel, Nothing's more irritating than someone going, I know how it feels. And damn well they don't, to actually have somebody there to have a policy in place. And many of those things are there, but just, I guess, to also boost up its prevalence, instead of trying to smear people on TV, try to let's show them some way to get better,
That's beautiful, because I know, and especially during 2020, I mean, we all need that right now. It's become a time where, we talk about social distancing, but I prefer physical distancing and having that conversation, because nobody should feel isolated right now, especially in the autism community, where anxiety, depression, trauma is way higher in autism than any other disability, and also the suicide rates, which I'm so glad you mentioned, because I guess one of the things I constantly hear about in our community is the question of bullying, and how so many individuals with special needs are more likely to be bullied compared to their non-disabled peers. Growing up, did you deal with any of that from any like specific quirks that you may have? Did you deal with any bullying in your own life?
There were, from being different, and being in public school, which I'm not vilifying. I'm just saying that once you enter that larger realm, people that don't have to be nice to you due to genetics, when I'm not thinking about it, I'll still jerk and clear my throat real loud. I'll have passionate discussions in my head where parts of it will come out verbally. So, sometimes I would learn that, like, if I would immediately, like, say I was clearing my throat, if I would say something out loud that I was thinking in my head, I would, due to having a sense of humor, it's my comedic talents, that my comedic talents saved me, really, where I would just make a joke about whatever I did. But it never really came down on me hard. I think more than anything else, because I kind of stayed away from the drama. So the dramas kind of stayed away from me. And that's the way I've learned to deal with it throughout all of life. And actually, it's just now coming to me that I feel like that's where I've kind of an innate shame comes from, because I feel like I'm hiding something that's broken from everybody. So actually coming out, like when you said, writing that poem, you to me, it's like you take your power back. This is what I've got. This is what it's about. This is how I feel about it. And I hope that you take with it what you do. And if you don't, then I can't do anything about that. But the weight of carrying some burden around that's shameful, getting that off of you is a huge benefit to your mental and spiritual well-being.
Absolutely. Yeah. And that's why I usually tell to the kids I talk to, I say, write a letter to a bully, not that you're going to actually ever give it to that bully, but to give yourself some power in the situation and just to get it all out on paper. I find is so therapeutic for so many kids I work with. In terms of some things so obviously you have a very accomplished career. What would you say has been one of your greatest successes in your life, if you just had to pick one?
Lord have mercy. Honestly, that my career as a teacher. There's nothing in the world like seeing someone who's thought they couldn't do it light up. And that's not something I take credit for. I don't think as a teacher you should. Your job is to shed light and to bring them to something and to see them get empowered. Once they get some traction under them, a student of any age, all you got to do is get out of the way. When you see that, when you can go home and feel like, all right, I did something good today, and I love my writing career. I love it. I thank God for it every day. The people that I deal with, the magazine, my NPR show, these things are tremendous blessings and gifts from life. But being a teacher is what I feel defines me as a person.
I love the fact that you have an NPR show, because NPR is just, for everyone obviously watching this, you've heard of NPR in the past, but just the amount of great content that's on there. And you have a great voice for podcasting, by the way. I'm just throwing that out there.
Thank you. Thank you. My daddy gave it to me, so you have to thank him. Yeah,
absolutely. Shout out to Dad. But yeah, no, I think it's so obviously, how did the NPR opportunity come about? Because that's amazing. All
right, this is one of my. I love these stories. I've told them 5,000 times, and I love these stories because there is a tremendous amount of hard work. As it is, I'm not trying to beef up the art world. you're going to work it to death to make it work in anything you choose to do. But there are these delightful, I think, gifts. I keep using that word, but gifts that come up when you're at least steering your ship in the right direction. About 5 years ago, a good buddy of mine said, we have this little radio show up here that pairs poets with musicians, and we'd love for you to be on it. I'm like, all right, cool. So I get up there, and you ever have a buddy that's, is about to pull one on you? They get that snickering, that evil, like Gargamel from the Smurfs kind of thing.
Yeah, all the time.
And I'm like, what, man? He's like, oh, nothing. So we get to the station, and he boots me out and says, it's NPR, dude. I got to get my kids, and tears out and leaves me there. And I'm like, NPR? No. And they're on their awning, NPR. So my immediate reaction was to run, but that was not an option. So I walked in, and again, what I've learned with understanding autism is it's going to be all right. It's going to be all right. This is a blessing. You are here at the gates of NPR. Let's go in here and not freak out. And my first publisher gave me a priceless piece of advice when reading and honestly speaking to people, because when you're uncomfortable in social situations, at least for me, I will talk so fast I'll cause your nose to bleed, because I'm trying to get it done and out, as fast as possible. So he got me on the phone and said, Cliff, when you read poetry, read it like this. And just hearing that it's spoken so slowly, I'm like, I can't ever talk that slow. But I remember just repeating that in my head as I went in, sat down, and calmly read my poems and was interviewed a little bit. And then a band came in and they played their song, and we cut up a little bit. We made it fun. And after the show was over, the station manager there, Richard Wynnum, shout out to him, love him to death. He's British. I'm not going to do his accent, but everything they say sounds incredibly intelligent. He said, Cliff, I like your accent. I said, I like your accent. He said, you need to have your own show. I'm like, okay. And he said, call me in 7 weeks after this fundraiser's done, and we'll hook it up. Now, I didn't think he was being dishonest, but I'm like, people get excited and they say things, whatever. So I go back home, and about 7 weeks, I email him back, and he immediately emails me back and says, yeah, let's do it. We're going to do it every month. It has a fifth Sunday. I didn't know that was a thing, but it is. And I went up there in my full-blooded excitement and brought 97 of my best friends and clogged them all into the station. And he goes, so Clifford, what's your formula? And I'm thinking, this ain't math. I don't know. What are you talking about? He's like, how are you going to run your show? I said, oh, yeah.
About that.
What do you suggest? Maybe I should have asked you that ahead of time. And it was the most fun. It's like, again, there's a component to all of these things that I do that I will not lie for a second about, that has a generous amount of that childhood joy. That, honestly, like that butterflies in your stomach when you're a kid and you're about to get in on Christmas morning and see all your stuff. That excitement, that grabs me, that gets me into the station every time. And again, it's allowed me to interview fascinating people from all walks of life in an environment in which I'm comfortable. And it sounds like a selfish kind of angle, I guess, but these people I would never be comfortable speaking with in any other environment. And I know that the information they give, all the products, all the things that I do, having an educational component, that there are people out there just like me that would love to know and ask the same questions that I'm doing.
Yeah, absolutely. We will definitely make sure they include a link to your NPR when this video goes live, because I would love for people to hear more about the conversations you're having as well. Cliff, is there anything else you would like for people out there to know about your story?
You can actually read all about it in my books, The Draw Broken Eyes and Worldly Metaphysics, and Athena Departs, and that's not a shameless pitch. I write so much of my material with dual meanings, and I know poetry that's part of the course, but there's an enormous amount of information in there and a dialogue in there that I'm having with others with autism. If you don't have autism, you won't lose anything in the poem. That's kind of the fun again and the magic of poetry that you don't get so much in prose. And in reading that, I want people to understand that you can make a living in a sphere in which you are comfortable, in a medium in which you love. And it's just the hard work and sacrifice. Don't give up.
Everyone, Kerry Magro here from A Special Community. I can't thank you enough for watching this video, and if you like this video, please click on some more videos around our YouTube page. We are just trying to give a voice to countless people in our neurodiverse community, so please, if you can, subscribe to our video page. And then you'll also get to see a little bit more about my story from nonverbal autism to today being a professional speaker. Thanks so much, y'all.